Welcome back to Court TV Live. We are in Toledo, Ohio this week for opening statements and the trial in the phony funeral home trial. Shawnte Hardin faces dozens of charges, including posing as a funeral director, intimidating a witness, and abuse of a corpse. Hardin has opted for a bench trial, meaning there's no jury here deciding his fate, only the judge. Still with us, former prosecutor, trial attorney Vonda Sargent, she's in Seattle, and criminal defense attorney Jeffrey Wolf in Denver. Before we hear from the defense, we want to check in with you guys to see what you thought of the state's opening. A bit lackluster, but one might think, for our viewers at least, Vonda, because they're used to the theatrics of the trials, and that's because there's a jury there. This was toned down as expected. Your thoughts, Vonda, on the opening from the state?
I think was a bit long. I think he could have tied it up a lot more succinctly and a lot quicker. I am pleased, however, that he touched on all the elements that he needed to prove in order to make his case, but it was just long. But if everything is to be believed that he said, and I am questioning a few of the things that he said because he prefaced quite a few of his factual assertions with "I think" or "I believe," which doesn't bode well if you're thinking that something might do that. Why are you bringing it up? Just tell the court the evidence that you do have and the evidence that you can prove, and not what I think. So overall, I think he did an okay job, but just ran quite a bit too long, in my opinion.
Jeffrey, what are you trying to accomplish here with an opening in front of a judge who has already presumably seen the lion's share of the material of this case that he is about to decide?
Well, you'd be surprised how little of the evidence the judge actually sees before a trial or before a sentencing in a case, because all they really see are what's in the court file, which ends up being affidavits. They have motions hearings where they hear a little bit about an investigation, but not about factual assertions in a case and not about witness statements and things along those lines typically. And so with a court trial, what you're really trying to do is just lay out the facts. Like you said, take out the theater and just tell the judge what's going to happen. I was a little concerned that he couldn't remember the names of his witnesses. He kept saying there's a person who's going to say this, a person said that, a person called this guy, and he just kept using pronouns and not using proper names. That was a little strange, and like was just said, it was a little long, and there was even the funny moment at the end where he said that's the case in a nutshell after he'd been talking for an hour. It's crazy. So it wasn't super effective, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's quite a nut. All right, let's do this. Let's listen to see what the defense has to say to the judge. Again, this is the opening statement from the defense.
And to Mr. Tomorrow, I was reminded of a song I'm sure Your Honor is familiar with. The Boxer. Simon and Garfunkel. There's a famous line in there that says, "A man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest." I'm going to be talking to you about what the rest of the evidence is. He's facing, or was facing, 42 counts involving 17 different statutes. It's now down to 40, thanks to Your Honor's ruling, but a fairly substantial amount. So how did he get to this place? We'll go back to when Sean was about 12 years old. He was the son of a preacher and was taken to a funeral. Not clear to him at this point exactly whose funeral it was, but it was a funeral. And he was intrigued by what had happened before the funeral to get him to that position. He went to his mother and said, could she arrange for him to have a job at the funeral? She talked to the director, sure. He was not embalming bodies, he wasn't counseling the grieving families. He was cleaning up, emptying waste baskets, scraping up chairs, but he was in the business, and he liked it. And you're gonna find after he left high school, he did go to the mortuary school in Pittsburgh. And to Mr. Tomorrow's point, he didn't graduate, but he went. It was too expensive, too time consuming. So he followed in his father's footsteps and became a pastor in Akron, Greater Faith Ministry Baptist Church. And in the course of doing his duties as a pastor, he would counsel families of those who'd lost a loved one. And we can all understand, if we haven't been through it, what that terrible experience is. Their emotion is devastating. But what Mr. Hardin came to understand during his service there is what the financial impact is, which is substantial. You'll hear the average nowadays cost to $10,000 to $12,000. And so the family, having just lost a loved one, suddenly is confronted with having to come up with $10,000 to $12,000. And most families don't have that laying around in a sock drawer. But you have to get somebody buried, cremated, however you want it done. And they would come to Shawn and talk to him about what their options were. And he would try to help them. He got to the point that he could get a funeral done for about $2,500. And he would be there as a guide, as a counselor. Now, people don't like that. You're going to find from the evidence that as of the past several years, they've developed what are called funeral doulas. They are midwives, in effect. There's a booklet published by the National Home Funeral Association that lists doulas available to counsel families about how to deal with what's happening. I mean, it's a very confused setting, and you don't have a lot of time to deal with it. And in particular in the Islamic religion, I think Your Honor knows, they're supposed to be buried within 24 hours. And so you've got to get through grieving, finances, and a funeral in a day. What Shawn and others like him do is help people through it. Identify the things they have to do. Because you don't need a funeral director. You don't need the big homes with all the elegant furniture. We're starting to do it as we used to 200 years ago, where the evidence would be that when Dad died, he would be laid out in what they called the parlor, on a table. And families and friends would come for a couple of days and grieve. And then they'd help the family bury him. Not uncommonly in the farm, out in the yard. But we've gotten away from that. And so now we've isolated ourselves from that process. And we've got funeral homes. And they are expensive. I'm not saying they're gouging, but they got a very different cost structure. And they need to charge those prices in order to keep their doors open. And unless somebody is helping families figure out how to do it on their own, which they're entitled to, there's absolutely no need for a funeral director to handle a funeral in the state of Ohio. None. Notwithstanding what Mr. Tamaro suggested. And that's what he was doing. Counseling those least able to afford their funerals. Mr. Tamaro suggested he was doing it to fleece them. That was his term. If there was fleecing going on, it was as much in his case as theirs. You'll hear him explain why those checks bounced. And they did. The families needed to get the person buried. They didn't have the money yet. We'll get it to you by Tuesday, Shawn. We'll get it to you by Thursday. And he would write a check. The cemetery would allow the funeral to go forward. The person is buried. And that's the last he ever heard of him. They're in the wind. And he's out $1,750, which he doesn't have. Because he's not a wealthy man. He's serving those in our society least able to handle these problems. You'll hear people tell you about how he actually did funerals for free. not a charge. There's a cost. Evidence will be he bore it. We've had discussions about the mosques in Columbus. There's two of them, Abu Bakr and the other name I can't pronounce. He was active with both of them. He developed a real expertise in how to handle an Islamic funeral. And he will tell you, he was at the point where if somebody died in the morning, he could often have the death certificate ready, because that's essential. The one thing I think Mr. Chamorro and I would agree on in the state of Ohio, you can't bury somebody without a death certificate. And they get delayed. They get delayed because they get misplaced, because in one instance at least, the wrong physician signed, it had to be redone. And I would ask Your Honor to keep in mind, what's the advantage to Mr. Hardin of having bodies in his possession not disposed of? None. He gets a certificate, he's going to go take care of it. He didn't have the certificates. And that's what happened with Rhonda Cooper. He didn't want to do it, but he's able to place a body almost any place he wishes. You're going to have testimony tomorrow from the investigator for the Lucas County Coroner's Office. And I listened to a recording of her the other day, and she says, the investigator for the state, you know, once he removes a body from our custody, and they have to do it, he would come up with a certificate of instruction saying, please allow Mr. Hardin to accept the body. He would do that. At that point, he can go out and put that body on the tarmac in the parking lot, and he's not committed an offense under the laws of Ohio. That's the investigator for the Lucas County Coroner's Office. Discussion of one of the facilities, RISE facility, R-I-S-E. That is the commercial name of a series of storage facilities throughout the state of Ohio.